Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our focus group today. So as you mostly know, we've got the 2020 comprehensive plan update is well underway, and I've already locked up. Nope, here I'm back. So we've got it well underway. And so as we've gotten into the meat of our goals and objectives, there's been a few areas that have come to the top in terms of focus group or focus areas that we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper on. So the topic today is one of those. We appreciate all of you being available to us and joining us on the Zoom call. But if you are still interested in getting into more detail on other areas of the comp plan, we'd also welcome your participation there as well. So let's really quick go through introductions. We've got some folks that looks like either maybe on the phone or no, maybe not. Anyway, so we'll go through some quick introductions, and then we'll get into the meat of the meeting. So I'm Larissa Sims, Assistant City Manager in Newport.
Did you want to call on people like you did the last time?
Okay, Sarah, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Sarah DeLandro. I'm a community planner with Human Nature. We're one of the consultants and part of the project team for the comprehensive plan. And yeah, really looking forward to digging in to some of these community planning issues with you all.
Great. Chris Manning?
Hi, Chris Manning, Principal Landscape Architect with Human Nature.
Chris Hopkins?
Hi, I'm Chris Hopkins. I'm a Manager of Planning Services with CT Consultants, part of the Human Nature CT team, working with Larissa and the City of Newport, and land use planner, zoning expert, things like that. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Sean Riggs?
Yes, I'm with CT Consultants as well. I'm a civil engineer specializing in transportation and public infrastructure.
Great. Bev Holiday?
Bev Holiday, City of Newport, Community Liaison Coordinator. And hi to Joy, who's joining us from Florida.
All right. Rachel Comte?
I'm Rachel Comte. I'm a principal with Urban Canopy Works. I'm a planner and an arborist, so I do urban forestry planning for cities across the U.S., and I also serve as the contract city arborist for Newport.
Yeah. Jennifer Brewer?
Sorry, you got to unmute to actually announce yourself right. Jenny Brewer, I am a resident in Newport for 6 years now. I work full-time as a lien consultant for Great American Insurance. So hopefully I can be a contributor.
Thank you. Joy Galbraith?
Hi, from Florida. I'm here working on a vintage trailer, but I own Costume Gallery. We've been in Newport for 24 years. I also work for Royal Caribbean and do freelance costume work around the country.
Great. Amanda Gray? You're muted.
And I started out with such enthusiasm, not even realizing I was muted. But yes, my name is Amanda Gray. I am a resident of Newport. I've lived here about 5 years now. I live in the Monmouth Row Apartments. And my daytime job, I work for the city of Cincinnati, and I work with small businesses who are interested in doing business with the Metropolitan Sewer District. So I have interest in community and also interest in small businesses.
Great. Jason Weir, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry my video is not working, but I'm Jason Weir with Engineer Building Systems, and we've been in Newport now for 6 years. So
great. Great. Okay, so I think Sarah, that's it, right? Nobody else has joined. Okay.
Nope,
good.
That's it.
All right. Well, again, thanks to each of you for being here. I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Chris, and she's going to kick us off with a little bit of introduction.
So we have a short few slides to go through. We wanted to just highlight today's agenda. Pretty much it's a very informal meeting. It's a small group. So our goal today with the focus group is, Sarah, if you could switch to the agenda. Next slide. Our goal today is really to hear from you. So we hope you do the majority of the talking, but to hear from you in terms of our subject matter today is the Central Business District and Central Gathering Place. So we want to really focus and spend the bulk of the time on that area of the city. But in order to make sure we're all understanding where we are in the comprehensive plan process, I wanted to give a short update on or overview of what we've done so far. And then we wanted to spend a little bit of time to ask all of you if you have anything related to a current or a planned project or an existing condition that you would also want to make sure we're all aware of that's related to this area. And then, as I said, then we will go into this targeted discussion where we've got some topics we want to make sure we touch on and get your thoughts. And then to the extent there's some time left, then if there's any additional items to discuss. And our goal is to stick to our 2-hour time frame so that we're done, if not before, at least no later than 1 o'clock. So with that, Sarah, if you can go to the next one. So in terms of the comprehensive plan process, we are, this is actually an update to the city's 2015 comprehensive plan. But as part of the review process where we've been working both with the steering committee on in regular meetings, we also have done some public interaction, getting some feedback from residents and business owners and that. And we have landed upon these 7 what we're calling aspirational goals. So these are very long-term goals that have come out of our deliberations so far. They relate to these 7 topics. And for the most part, they're talking about things that we hope the city will be in the long run. So strong and vibrant neighborhoods, that's the hope for all of the neighborhoods within the city. Meaningful places, that means that people who live in the different neighborhoods also feel connected to the place, their neighborhood, as well as the city as a whole. And that has to do with architecture and historic preservation and things like that, and what the meaning of place is. Number 3, economic prosperity and resilience. So that's making sure that people who live and work in Newport, that there are jobs for people, and that the businesses that are here for the long term because they're resilient. Number 4 is both well-connected transportation networks and infrastructure. 5 is natural environment. We're looking for the right sort of adjective to put before the natural environment, whether it's valued or the valued natural environment, but somehow understanding or conveying to everyone that Newport wants to preserve, enhance, protect the natural environment. Number 6 is healthy communities. So this is where we talk about parks and access to parks and access to trails and things like that, and healthy food, and so that the people who live in Newport can lead, and actually the environment fosters leading a healthy lifestyle, an active lifestyle. And then number 7 is good government, aspiring to ensure that the government, the city government, is fiscally responsible and is maintaining and working towards all 6 of the first goals. So during our conversation then, we identified specific locations within the city where we thought it made sense to convene smaller focus groups like we're doing today, to allow us the opportunity to talk to people who are very familiar with each of these different areas. And so the Central Business District and Public Open Space or Central Gathering Place is one of our 3 topics. This is actually the second of 3 focus groups that we are conducting. And so included in this area, this focus group, we want to talk about placemaking. We want to talk about understanding the need for and potential locations for a central park area, and other additional public open space, and things like that, and other issues related to the CBD. And then on the next slide, what we've done here is we've taken the 6 different goals and objectives that we've discussed and shown how these broad-based goals and specific objectives that have been discussed so far with our steering committee, how they specifically relate to and are relevant for the Central Business District / Central Park discussion. So, you know, we've been talk about strong and vibrant neighborhoods from a housing standpoint, and that includes apartments above retail in the downtown area, meaningful places, and that includes having a strong business district that's diverse but has a unique identity with gathering places and local events. Economic development, looking at land that might be available for redevelopment, land use compatibility, things like that. The well-connected transportation infrastructure. A lot of this relates to parking management and traffic flow, bikeability and walkability throughout the district. Natural environment, looking at the potential for using green infrastructure whenever it's appropriate. And then a healthy community, again, looking at neighborhood or new parks to the extent there's the potential, looking for areas where makes sense for a public, quote, living room, in ways that encourage people to interact with one another. So that's a quick overview.
Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Sarah, I think there are people in the waiting room. No? Okay, they were emailing me. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So with that, we have a couple of maps to show you before we get started. And then after, so Sarah, if you can just. So we have a map that we've been referring to that shows the development opportunities in the current projects. Our focus area are, as you well know, Monmouth and the York Street corridors as they go north and south and make up the Central Business District. And so you can see where new development or new development opportunities are located along the riverfront, and then at the southern end, just south of the railroad tracks. We have a variety of other maps related to zoning, land use, etc., in case we need to refer to any of those. But with that, I thought then we could go to the interactive part where we ask you for if there are any things that you would like to point out in terms of new development or proposed development that you are aware of that you think would be useful for all of us to have a good understanding of related to today's discussion.
What are you asking? I'm not sure what the question is.
So to the extent that we're thinking about the topics that we wanted to talk about today, if there is anything from your vantage point that you think is worthwhile to point out to the group that's important for all of us to know about the Central Business District. I guess that would be.
One thing, and I may have brought it up in a prior meeting, but I live in the Central Business District as well as have a co-working space, which I didn't mention, also in the Central Business District. And I see, although it's changed a little bit since COVID because rules have been adjusted since COVID, but I feel like the living room concept with the outdoor areas, you know, sort of outdoor seating, outdoor tables, you know, allowing that is, well, I'd love to have a central park, and I think people who know me know that I'm always pushing that idea, but there is the whole living room idea along the streets. And one thing you see at night is there aren't many people along the streets at night. It looks deserted. And I feel like that could change if people were sitting outside. And I know that you do see it in more now, but I know it wasn't allowed for a while. And so I don't know where we are with that.
Rachel, how long have you had space in this Central Business District?
I lived in the East Row for 10 years, and then I bought a vacant lot and built a house in an infill development kind of situation. And I've been here for 3 years now.
And where is your infill project?
On Dayton Street, right off of Monmouth.
Okay.
Like between 8th and 9th on Dayton.
So for other people who live in the district, for example, Amanda, can you give us a little background on how you decided to move into the district and what you think are characteristics you'd like everyone to know about?
Yeah, am I off mute? Let me see. Okay.
You're good.
I moved into the area because I frequented the Newport on the Levee, the restaurants and the other activities that were there. And so just kind of in time spent there, I came across Monmouth Row. I think they had just been built maybe a year prior to when I moved in. So that's what initially attracted me to the area. And as I've shared before, what I really like is the walkability of the community and having so many things so close to me here within the community. But when you think about the region as a whole, Newport is the prime location to have access to the region as a whole. So, you know, I share with people sometimes when people say, well, what led you to move to Newport? People who maybe live on the Ohio side of the river. I just say everything you could possibly want from Cincinnati, you can have that really and more in Newport from my perspective. So that's what I would want people to know. I feel that I get the convenience of big city living, but also the sense of a smaller community as well, living in the Newport area. So that's what drew me and has kept me here almost 5 years now.
That's what, Amanda, same exact thing. I feel like I get the big city, but I'm living in a small town. And that's hard to get.
It is. It is.
I also, I moved from the East Row because all of the houses in the East Row are so big. It was too big for me. And I'm a planner, so I'm, you know, urban. I want to walk, and I built a smaller house. It's not small, but so that was the other reason too. I see Bev shaking her head. It's smaller. It's smaller.
But do you feel like there are an adequate number of housing options in the CBD?
It seems like everything that goes for sale gets snatched up pretty quickly. And I know there are residents above the shops along Monmouth, but I don't know much about that. That's a good question. I don't know.
I was going to say, if Joy will unmute herself, which she has, Joy is going to be your prime example of property owner with apartments. She used to have the building next to her. So Joy, it's all yours.
Well, I've been there 24 years. I've seen an amazing change. When I moved there, and I moved from Western Hills, people thought I was absolutely crazy. I just love it. I feel like I have more of a neighborhood feel, even though I don't live in Newport. I'm there so much, and my business is there, than I do in my own neighborhood. But I do have 4 apartments above the costume gallery. And then in 2000, we bought the vacant La Madame's strip club and rehabbed it into Mama Theater. And then in 2014, we sold it to Falcon Theater. So there are apartments above that. We are just like 3 years ago, started an extensive renovation on upgrading the 4 apartments above the costume shop. We have 3 of them finished with extensive renovations and high-end appliances and things. And we've had no problems renting those at all. The comment about the vacant streets, I do agree with that. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. And in the evenings when Stained Glass Theater has events and Falcon Theater has events and Southgate Revival, when those places are open and have events, I see a lot more traffic on the street than I do now. Yeah. And of course, Costume Gallery is still closed. We hope to reopen the 1st of October. But we've had absolutely no business because of no films in town or play productions or things like that. I have a question about the Central Park or living room. I think that's very interesting. I think it's, well, it really is needed. And so I'm interested more in that too.
I have a question about your customers. Do you have an idea of what your market area is in terms of how far away people are coming to your store?
From Dayton, Ohio to Lexington to Louisville. And actually we might grow the business because the costume shops what I do is more than just a costume party shop. I produce costumes because I have a full production room for theatrical venues. So, you know, I work for the Lyric Opera of Chicago. I work for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. I've worked for the Rockettes. So we produce, I produce things for Des Moines Opera. They don't always come into me, but I have a, what I call a backdoor business. So there's a lot of businesses that go out my back door that are shipped around the country. But I do have people that will drive 2 hours to come. And when I said that might grow is there's about 3 costume companies in, let's say, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Cincinnati, Indianapolis area that are closing because of COVID. And if I can hang on because I own my building, which is a godsend, you know, that might bring a whole different clientele to me.
I would add too, I own the co-working space, the 9th and Monmouth, the catty corner from Caravello's. And we have people come in from Fort Thomas, Fort Mitchell. We had a couple people from Ohio for a while, but it's, you know, with co-working, you're not going to create a commute for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not going to do that. But people say when they come in, the first thing they ask is, are there places to eat around here? That's the first thing they ask when they think about, do I want to work out of that space? And yes, there are, but they're, you know, like Lana's, I think, and there's a couple places that are only open like breakfast and lunch. And so at dinner time, it kind of seems quiet. There's always stuff going on at Caravello's, so that helps, but just some feedback. But that's what people are asking me.
This is Jason. I'd like to chime in real quick. I will tell you, just from us working here for 6 years, and unfortunately with COVID, a lot of our guys now, there's not a lot of outdoor seating. So that's what a lot of our team members are looking for. So a lot of them now are actually just packing. And they're actually looking for more green space so they can go sit in the park or whatever it may be to have their lunch. And one of the reasons why we stay down here is because right now it's very easy access to where everybody lives. We're very centrally located, and that the parking is really good for us as well. And one of the things I wanted to ask, because you were talking about like future projects and everything else, is there any updates on like the Carlisle, that parking lot that is right across from the press? Because I know that's where a lot of our guys park today as well.
Oh, I wanted to just break in for a second. We had a late addition to our group here, Renee. Do you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself real quickly? And then I know that in the chat you have a comment to make as well.
Sure. I never know. Okay, you guys can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I never know what the best way is to communicate in the Zoom group, so I love using the chat. My name is Renee Schuler, and I own Eat Well Catering. We were previously on Monmouth between 9th and 10th. We were there for about 11 years, renting Eric Haas's space over there. Now I have purchased the Bernhardt's Bakery building and refurbished it for our new kitchen, as well as the parking lot across the street. And so just in the comments, I feel like, I know that so far, at least the discussion I've been privy to, a lot of the discussion has been about Monmouth Street, which I feel is leaps and bounds above the development of York Street. So I know that the plan is to develop both of these streets. And I feel like Monmouth has such a big head start. I think, honestly, I think something that helps, at least when you're looking at further south on Monmouth Street, having the bus stops there means that we have access to employees who are available to work in our businesses. And as well, I think that the red bikes, I don't know how popular the red bike station is in front of the municipal building, but I have to think that that helps with the foot traffic. But I feel like when you drive up or when you drive down York Street, you know, we used to keep our front door locked on Monmouth because there was so much foot traffic and we would always have people coming in just, you know, randomly. Where over here on York Street, we don't keep it locked at all because we do have the gyms. I feel like the gyms are bringing a lot of people here. And of course, my business, much like, I apologize, Joy's business, brings a lot of people over from the greater Cincinnati area. So I'd love it if we could capitalize on that, because I think when we get people over here, they're like, oh, that's not that far, and look how easy the parking is. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then Jason, as to your point, I know I just heard that Covington extended outdoor seating capacity for restaurants through the end of the year. I don't know if that's something that Newport has done as well, but I heard that. And of course, Governor DeWine, I believe it's at midnight tonight, we can be back to full capacity with restaurants and venues, pre-COVID full capacity. So I don't know how quickly Bashir will respond. I know, you know, Northern Kentucky has had a leg up because we've been slower to make these changes. So we've had more capacity in Northern Kentucky, but at any rate, just a couple of tidbits that have been on my mind.
Great.
Are there particular improvements that you would like to see to York Street?
I just think York Street has a lot of vacant property and a lot of, you know, right next to me, I've got the building in question, 514. That's that blue residential building that they're trying to get zoned as completely residential. You know, the rent there is, I believe, less than $350 a month for those units, where, you know, other refurbished units in Newport are going for $1,200 or more. You know, on the other side of York Street, we've got just all of those closed, boarded up businesses. I believe on the next block between 6th and 7th. And then what is going on with the big, and I know the dollar store just closed too, so that's vacant. It just feels like a lot of empty parking. It's not a hardware store. It's
The home improvement.
yeah.
Building surplus.
Yeah,
Building surplus.
I feel like that's just a big energy suck, right in the middle of such a valuable York Street property. And I know it's been discussed that maybe we could turn that into a park, a Central Park area there, which
I'm with Rachel on just expanding the options for smaller housing. Smaller, you know, we tease Rachel about her tiny house. It's not so tiny, but I think that would be a super cool option as an alternative to renting. So I know there's a lot of apartments above, you know, commercial buildings, and that's great. But there's also a wide variety of people that would like to purchase. And like Rachel said, you know, their options are either something that's really small on the west side that they have to totally renovate, or something really big on the east side, and that just that in between size, housing sizes, I think is a big need for us.
Also too, with that smaller size is, I know, I know this anecdotally, so I don't know this, but on the East Row, there's a lot of retired people living, like empty nesters living there too. And I just hear in conversation, the stairs are, you know, it's sort of an aging in place kind of thing that's lacking. So there's a lot of people want to live on one floor. And that's doesn't exist over there. There is more options for that on the west side, but like Jenny said, you need to rehab, which, you know, maybe that's just the reality, but I have one floor living. I mean, I have this loft, but I only work up here. That's all I do up here.
Yeah, and I think the bigger problem on the west side too is the parking. You know, so if we could come up with some kind of a happy medium in between the east and the west side that kind of allows, because there is a lot of options for, you know, parking lots and things, you know, in between in that business district. So if we could kind of combine some efforts there, it'd be awesome. And there are things, you know, on York Street and Monmouth Street that we've looked at from a investment perspective that just for multiple reasons, one or another, didn't pan out. And, you know, we've invested in more things over here in East Row, but, you know, we're always looking for, you know, something to, I mean, our passion is Newport. We moved here 6 years ago thinking we're downsizing. That never happened, but we've renovated a few properties. Love it. We're just in love with the history and just the cool vibe of Newport. But you know, we're always looking for something to revive and put our love into. So I think there's lots of opportunity on York and Monmouth both.
You know, one other thing I would add to the discussion about, you know, are there housing options? I also think that there are, and that, so the house next to mine is constant problems of heroin, and, you know, I moved out of the East Row, which is a more, you know, cleaned up, more affluent area. I'm right in the transition zone. And so there are a lot of people who like, oh my God, I don't know how you're living there kind of thing. So there's a fear factor to it. You know, and I've had stuff stolen and, you know, just, it's not, you know, we're not the only ones dealing with it, but that is a barrier to some people thinking they want to live in this central zone. I don't know if that's the case elsewhere, but there are a few vacant houses on my street. But also nobody wants to sell those. I think people are just kind of sitting on them, waiting for markets to do what they're going to do. And so there's people I know who've wanted to buy them and they're just sitting empty because people are just sitting on them. Just thoughts.
Yep, that's a problem.
Well, I have a question for Jenny, and then after that, I think we'll turn it over to Chris, who will walk us through our targeted discussion. But Jenny, you were mentioning how we were looking for places to invest. Is that you personally, or is that you with your business?
So my husband and I, we have some investment
Okay.
LLCs that we operate through. Yeah. And right, our most current project is we've purchased 601 Overton, old gas station at 6th and Overton, and we're putting Roebling Point Books and Coffee is going to move in there as their second location. And so we have rentals upstairs that we're working on. That's our current project.
Okay.
Is anyone exploring condos at all?
We have one of those too. We have a condo down at the Hannaford that we rent. You mean like converting some buildings into condos? Is that what you're?
Or new condos?
That's kind of a neat idea too. Does anybody have any idea what the status is of 601 York Street that I think was like a welcome house at some point? It was purchased, and I think there was some issue with zoning, and I don't know whether it's moving forward or whether it's vacant still, or that would be a cool property to kind of maybe turn into some condos. It's got parking.
Yeah. So they lost their argument at the BOA that they should be able to have a continuance for their grandfathered use is what they were looking for. And they've appealed that, and they also issued a fair housing action against us.
They have, what was the last piece you said, Larissa?
They've a fair housing action against us.
Mm-hmm.
I work out at the Salt Fitness that's 7th in York, and there's nothing above them, and there's 3 floors, and the owner wants businesses up there, offices, and he can't fill it.
It's a beautiful building.
It is, yeah. And my gym
lofts up there.
What's that?
It's great lofts up there.
Yeah.
I was up there when people were living in those.
Yeah.
They could be one huge loft or divided. It'd be great.
Rachel, is there an elevator in that building? Do you know?
No.
No.
It's a walk up.
I also have a 2nd floor space up that I have on the market right now for commercial lease. We'd love to.
Oh yeah, the guy who runs the gym, he rents that space, and he's trying to buy, and he can't find any places. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I know we touched on parking a little bit. Anything else that people would like to say about parking? Is there an adequate amount of parking? Is it well distributed? Are there particular types that work well, or types that we're missing?
I would hate to see more parking requirements. But I don't own a business like some of you do that requires people to come in. So I'm coming from that perspective, but
I think that parking on Mama Street, I've never had a problem finding a place on Mama Street. There's several parking lots that I think are really, the placement and the locations of those are pretty good. There's always seems to be options to park. So I think Monmouth Street feels pretty good to me from when I go down there. York Street, I think will have to be built out a little bit more. I think there's some opportunity on York Street for some additional parking.
As a business on Monmouth Street, I don't have customers who come for some come for hours, but we seem to do okay. But then we also have a back lot, so I'm lucky with that we can park in the back, and I can also load out the back with customers and that. But I think Monmouth Street's pretty good. People seem to come and go. I guess, I don't know if it's not a parking question, and I'm probably opening up a can of worms, but is there any more thought to two-way on Monmouth?
I think that is an upcoming question, but yes, when I first started here 4 years ago, there was a conversation about taking Monmouth and York, because you have to do both because it's a couple, it's a one-way couple. back to two-way. And apparently there had been conversations about that, for many years before that even. And so when the roundabouts were constructed, then the conversation turned to, well, let's see what the traffic looks like after the roundabouts are constructed. And this conversation is with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And let's see how that, traffic flow continues to change. And so one of the things we did want to talk about, I think, today is the feasibility from your all's perspective of taking those roadways to two-way, because if you look at best practices for activating spaces and engaging with the traveling public, two-way streets are much better for that than one-way streets. So yeah, we'd be really interested to know what your feedback might be on those changes.
Yeah, and you definitely see that as a trend too, and particularly in historic districts like this one, of going back to two-way.
Well, I've always said yes to two ways, and I know not all business owners have, and I think it's a shame that there aren't more of the core business district owners on this today. But anytime I've been in a historic district in the two ways, I've not had a problem parking. I've been in and out of shops. I park and I walk blocks and enjoy that. And I think two-way slows traffic down, because when we would have the shows at the Monmouth Theater and I'd be sitting out front while the shows were going on, cars just go zip, 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 zip. And on two ways, they seem to slow down. So my vote is yes, for what it's worth.
Also, too, I think when we get a lot of people coming to the levee, and right now all the traffic comes to the levee north from Newport. So there's no kind of, hey, you could also drive into Newport and see the shops kind of thing. I don't think they look at York that way yet.
Yeah, I think from a visitor perspective, two-way streets are more approachable. Yeah. I think a lot of people, that don't live in the city and they're not familiar with one-way streets, they kind of panic about that. So I feel like that's a deterrent. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to drive down the wrong way on the wrong street. And so people just don't go. They don't go explore.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing, about two-way streets is that in order to accommodate those turning movements at the intersections, sometimes you lose a parking space or two. So the conversation's often, what is that balance? Is it worth losing a couple of parking spaces to have that additional two-way traffic? Do you guys have any thoughts about, what you'd be willing to sacrifice as a business owner?
Well, so let's say you would be going south on Monmouth. There seems to be readily available parking on 7th Street. I know Jason has his bike canopy up now, but still there's parking next to National Band and Tag. So somebody could park there and walk back the block. There's parking a lot of times on 6, because I walk the dogs out and around the 600 block and around York. And I think if people are interested in stopping and seeing the shops or walking the streets, they're going to walk a half a block. If they're not interested, then they're just going to drive on by and they weren't going to stop anyway.
Yeah, and while we're kind of building out the whole plan on York Street, is the time to think about that. So, if there are parking spaces that would be lost with the two-way traffic, now's the time to think about, well, how can we get that parking back in with maybe an extra lot periodically?
Right, and the bus service, as Renee was saying, is important, and so is bicycling. Any thoughts about cycling and sharing the road, or focusing on particular streets for bicycles and better connectivity?
I chair that Connect NKY project where we put those temporary bike lanes in along Saratoga. And we did a lot of ride-throughs with the community members leading up to that to figure out, where do we want lanes? Where do we need lanes? And as far as bringing people into Newport, up Saratoga was a big one because all those people come across the Purple People. And there are people who commute towards the city. So that's a big one. And I know there's parking on both sides there. And we're not really talking about Saratoga, but I think it sort of fits into this conversation. But then also we ran one across 5th Street and 6th Street. We really wanted to connect both sides of the city, you know, not have them be so separate, because it is very, you live on the west side, you live on the east side, you know, and we want to connect those. And we really wanted, the ideal, I think, would have a bike lane up and down Monmouth or York, if that becomes like a Main Street kind of area. But they're just with the parking, it's kind of like, I mean, the idea is that it would be good for the businesses, to everyone cycling by, stop for a drink, stop for something to eat, but that there just wasn't room. That was the sense, because the idea was, what we were directed is don't take away parking, even for the demonstration project. That was our mandate. So
yeah, that project, Saratoga being a spine north-south, makes a lot of sense. And, you know, the 5, 6, as well as the 10th and 11th Street are really good east-west connectors.
Yeah, and 6 all the way into Bellevue.
Right.
The Kroger and the high school and the library and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at 9th Street too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and wide.
Yeah, and that was the other thing when we looked at 9th Street. It is wide, but we were kind of like, do we even need lanes there? Because no one felt uncomfortable biking there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were thinking, well, let's not focus on that because people are already doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some streets are more naturally set up for sharing the road,
Mm-hmm.
while others, you know, you really need a separate lane.
Mm-hmm. So I feel I'm like all about the sharing the lanes for bikes and scooters.
Mm-hmm.
To get scooters, you know, I ride scooters. I love them. But I don't ride them on the sidewalk, you know, and there's always problems with that. But with the lane, I even got with our bike, one of the best things about that Connect NKY project is I got a couple of commissioners and the mayor to ride a scooter down the lane. And I was like, yes. Like, wow, this is really fun. Yes, it is.
Yeah, you see the city differently that way, for sure.
Yeah, you do.
Well, let's get to this topic of the central space or the living room.
Chris,
Yes.
It's Bev. Before you move on, I think Jason Weir asked for an update on the World Peace Bell site. So Larissa, can you do that for him?
Yes.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't see that. So the Peace Bell site is there's a concept design for that, and they have applied for industrial revenue bonds with the city, as well as financing through a TIF project through the state. And so they are working on putting the financing together for their concept plan. And the plan includes a large parking garage. That's one of the things that the city wanted to see there because there is such significant parking there now that's supporting the surrounding businesses. And so that is still, oh, look, yep, look at that. So that is still on the, proposed to be on the site, and that would be public as well. And then there's a hotel that's proposed, and these are some of the early drawings that she's showing. It's, some tweaks have been made and actually will continue to be made. So, but there's a hotel that's proposed there, you see along 4th Street, and then a mixed-use development on Monmouth Street, which really was at the request of the city. We wanted to see the continuation of activity along the Monmouth Street area on that block, much like it is in the all the other blocks north and south. So we wanted to try to enliven that space with the mixed-use building. So they've got that incorporated with office and some ground floor retail.
What's the timing of that, Larissa?
So they are in the process of doing their economic impact study with the state relative to their TIF financing, and that's a pretty lengthy process. So once that gets completed and they get all of their financing in order, it should take 18 months or so to construct. they're going to do 2 phases. They're going to do the parking garage and the hotel first, and then the mixed use building, just because of the, you know, to build an office space, you kind of need to have an office user these days. So, you know, it could be a couple of years out before any of this is really well underway.
You know, one thing when I look at this, and this is not, I know generally how development programs work, or projects work, and that you don't really have a say in it, but they're building out to that right-of-way line. And to me, I just wonder how much space is available in a design like this for that living room kind of use along the sidewalk.
Yep, that was one of our comments to them as well. This is, like I said, this was an early concept plan, so there have been some changes made. I can't recall how much difference there was on the street-facing areas. But that's a good point, yes.
Now, Larissa, is this one developer or is this multiple?
So right now it's the Pans who did the Hampton Inn. It's their development. I imagine, because they are not office developers, I imagine that they are likely to partner with someone for that particular part of the program, but they haven't selected anybody yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And the other thing too, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not commenting too much, but I just see the roofs as unused. You know, and I know I mean, it's super expensive to do green up on a roof. I know that. But I just feel like rooftop stuff with our view of the city is just a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. They have some of that incorporated into some of their other concepts.
Okay.
Well, I think it's important to point out that it includes a major parking structure. And I think you see that happening more and more as the city densifies. You'll probably see less and less surface parking and more structured parking starting to occur.
I know in Denver, I went to a session on autonomous vehicles, and in Denver, they were saying they're no longer allowing parking garages to be built downtown that can't be retrofitted to office space later.
Right.
And so because they know that as things, however they change, nobody can predict how all of this ride share, autonomous transit, all that stuff will change everything. But I hope that we're thinking about that. I know it's early on, but I hope that we're thinking about that too.
It's a great topic, Rachel, the adaptive reuse of parking structures, the floor to ceiling ratio, the lack of sloped ramps that are internal to the structure. All of those things are important things to talk about and explore, so that adaptive reuse opportunities are left open for the future, because we don't know what those impacts are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that this was one of the sites, you know, several years ago that people talked about maybe being a central park, a living room, if you will. And certainly I think a development like this would probably, you know, impact that opportunity. But there are other opportunities, and we wanted to get some input from you on, you know, what does being central mean? You know, where is a place, or where are places where it would feel equally accessible to everyone, you know, in the heart of Newport? And, you know, what are some potential opportunity sites or areas that we should be focusing on as we move forward? So we have this aerial photograph that we can zoom in and out and pan around, and would love to get some thoughts from everyone on where those best opportunities are.
Well, Renee mentioned the building surplus right there. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What do all of you consider to be the strengths and weaknesses of that area as a potential Central Park living room location?
I think it's perfect. I think it's just a wasted opportunity. That the space is huge. There's so much opportunity for that space right there. I think that would be a really wonderful, you know, what I always think about, and I'm not really sure what, I think you mentioned a term, placemaking. I'm not really sure I know what you mean by that term, but what I think would be a cool thing to have in that location would be something that would really attract creatives, artists. You know, I think with the West Side being all the smaller homes and stuff, I think we're going to get an influx of younger people. And I think if we can pull in some more creative, artistic folks, I think that would lend itself for more community involvement and just activity. I think that would be a really cool location to kind of bring all that from all sides, from the north, you got the east side, you got west side. I think that would be a really cool kind of a space to maybe just kind of drive that involvement,
Right.
you know, community involvement.
Placemaking has a lot of different dimensions to it, but it really focuses in on, you know, connecting people to what's unique and special about a particular place. And, you know, some of it's responding to what's there, and some of it is propelling it forward to what it could be. And so it's this really dynamic balance of old and new, of honoring the past, but propelling the community forward. You can think about Washington Park as an example of that, you know, really playing upon those energies. Certainly one of the advantages of this site is the scale of it. I mean, we don't have very many properties this large within this core district area. You know, one of the weaknesses of it is, you know, it's adjacent to the jail. And so that would be an important consideration, you know, how we address that.
Yeah, another thing that my family and I always talk about, you know, when we think about that creative attraction, is a makerspace. You know, just a warehousey kind of environment, which this would be a perfect location for as well. Just for people to learn trades, share resources, share equipment. You know, so many people have, gosh, I'd love to just refinish a piece of furniture, but I don't have a garage. Somewhere to go for a simple thing like that, to everything from that to learning how to weld, or using a wood shop that you don't have to invest all the equipment costs. Just sharing trades and sharing equipment, and, you know, to kind of, I think it's a cool thing to bring creatives together as well. Plus there's all kinds of opportunities for retail events in those kind of spaces. You know, people are crafting things and making things, and then it has a retail space for people to be able to generate some income off of them. But
so you're saying that would be synergistic with a central gathering space, living room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So along that line, what Jennifer says, I've seen spaces in the containers. So if you're worried about the jail, you could put container spaces opening towards York Street against the jail, and the maker space could be in each one of those, and you could have 3-sided buildings with tables and places for people to learn and for artists to work, and then have, I think it would be a great gathering space for like Jennifer said, to connect the east and west, because there is a big division there. And it's not just for, you know, people in the East Row who might be creative, but I'm sure there's a lot of creativity on the west side too, and we should be able to encourage those people to work together and do some really big community projects that way.
Much in that way.
I don't know what the stigma is around the jail, but I feel like it's probably one of the safest places to be.
And I would say the reason that I think this space is so appropriate is because it is far enough north. I think one thing, you know, as much as we're talking about just Newport, the city of Newport, connecting the east and the west, I also think we want to connect across the river so that it can become a central park that people can utilize. Also, when we're thinking, I love the idea of the makers and the artists. I have my mother and my sister, both visual artists. But I also, as an event professional, I want to make sure that we are also considering the possibility of both public events like festivals and things like that, as well as there could be the potential for private events, which could generate some revenue for the city, much in the way that Premier Parks runs 9 Cincinnati park sites as private event venues, in addition to them being public, you know, venues that are open to the public. So just another thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about how many people that live downtown Cincinnati come over to Newport for everything, shopping, for, you know, like grocery stores, all kinds of things. So that would be another draw for people coming through, you know, just to have extra things to do.
I was one of those people. I lived in the west end of Cincinnati prior to moving to Newport, and I came to the Newport Kroger for my grocery shopping. And so spending that time coming over here to grocery shop, and I had the Rio Grande restaurant was one of my favorite restaurants. So it wasn't a huge mind shift for me to think about actually living here.
Yeah, and this site would certainly shine a light on York Street, you know, as part, kind of reinforce that, the importance of that corridor.
One thing,
Pull some people off of Monmouth, you know, that would, yes, it would definitely make for a more cohesive CBD.
Right?
yeah. I
Well,
think
there's some interesting synergies east-west there too. You have the new brewery there, and there's some parking. So there's some open space kind of permeability to the east that could connect over to Monmouth.
I think too, one of the, you know, I was one of the people who pushed that Peaceville Lot Park thing. I even did sketches and all this stuff. I was really into that. Because I mean, how often do you have an entire city block that's right downtown? That's right. I mean, it's just sort of like, and there's a, you know, a monument there. And I mean, it just seemed perfect, but that's no longer an option. This site for me, I was like, well, it's not so central. That was my first reaction. But then thinking, you know what, I think it's important to have a park that's not right on the water so that it is a Newport community thing, but it's close enough to the water that people could participate and come in. It's not like it's south of the railroad tracks or anything like that. And I think it does tie east and west because there are other park options in the East Row, like Providence Park and the dog park and other things. So I think having something a little bit into the west side is a good thing. I think it could be a good thing there.
Yeah, and that's consistent with conversations we had with our steering committee and others about, you know, is Festival Park the central park, or do we need something more internal? And there was clear consensus that it needed to be more internal. And Festival Park is its own thing.
Picture art shows there and yoga and movie night and just stuff that brings the community out just to hang out. You don't have to be, I like the makerspace idea too, so it's not either or, but just our central place to meet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely on our radar screen. Are there other sites that we should be considering? Or is that the only one?
There is already a big park at Bernadette Watkins Park, right along the, you know, that was housing projects there, and they had to move Bernadette Watkins Park. So yeah, right there. Yeah, that is a big park. And we just had that playground installed with volunteers. And I think one thing that's missing there is programming or more care, because as a city arborist, we've got some trees in not so great condition over there, and just care and programming, I think, is missing there. I'm not saying that is to use that instead of this, but I'm just kind of saying that's another space that isn't used.
Yeah, and we're going to have a lot of conversation about that with the West Side Focus Area group, and connectivity with the Licking River, with the 4th Street Bridge that's going to be improved.
Yeah.
All of that. Bernadette Watkins is kind of ideally situated for some of those opportunities. No question. Very important green space.
Programming, it is always, I think, a big challenge. We don't have a recreation staff, so to speak. I mean, we've got folks that book the softball fields and the shelters and all that kind of thing. But we don't have the capacity to do that kind of programming. So it's, and I think it's really, it's important.
Yeah.
At least to establish the park as as the asset that it can be in the neighborhoods and in the areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how we overcome that with our limited resources, but I hope that we can.
Is there a nonprofit that could take on the responsibility for it?
There is a nonprofit, but I don't see how they would absorb that.
Agree.
I think the question is pointed in the right direction, though. I mean, a lot of times cities don't have the capacity to manage major events and program opportunities that are in parks. And so the answer often is partnerships. And so, who are the potential partners? I mean, you look across the river, even in Cincinnati, a lot of the major programming that they do is through partnerships. I mean, 3CDC does all the programming on Fountain Square, Washington Park, Ziegler Park. They raise the money, they manage the events. And so Newport isn't alone in that challenge. And so I think there's a lot of good precedents out there for partnerships. And it doesn't have to be one partnership for all the parks. It can be more site specific if it needs to be.
Yeah, I think it is hard. You see things, maybe an outsider looks at things like, well, there's Smale Park on the Ohio side, and so there's this festival park that we might someday get on our side. But Cincinnati is enormous, and we have 15,000 people and a limited staff. So it is not, even though we do have this prime location, we're small. So,
Yeah, so looking at Festival Park as an example, I mean, a lot of the new development opportunities that you see in the city are happening along the riverfront, and that's no mistake. And so those development entities become really strong potential partners in programming and activating the riverfront because it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and when we did the Connect NKY bike lane thing, Newport and the Levee was a great partner. They were really interested in, I mean, they were only, logically, they were only going to do programming on their location, which I get. But they were interested because they had the same idea. The folks at Monmouth Row Apartments, where Amanda lives, they were kind of like, hey guys, whatever we could, we'd love to have a bike lane go past our building at Town Properties, right? Is it Town Properties?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were.
Town is very civic minded. They understand the value of those things.
Yeah. And they were, it was a volunteer thing. And so we didn't push it any further after the event was over. I know as a volunteer, I was tired. So, there were all of these relationships that we could have pursued, but we were all volunteers and we were tired.
Yeah. So, Sarah, if you don't mind, let's zoom in to the Monmouth York spine, maybe as far east as Saratoga, as far west as at least York, maybe Columbia. And just make sure that there's not any other potential locations that we're missing, other opportunities that you see, whether surface lots or underutilized properties or you know, maybe businesses that are there, but they would like to grow and they don't have the space to grow. And so maybe relocation is an opportunity, you know, things like that. Any other things simmering under the surface that we can't see as obviously as the...
I know that York Street Cafe has been trying to sell their building for a long time. I know the price is high, but the building itself would be super neat to do some fun things with. I think the location's cool. The architecture is amazing. It's an enormous building. That would be kind of a neat thing to try to promote something cool to go into there.
Larissa,
Like York
correct
Street
me if
Cafe, though.
I was gonna say,
What's that?
Larissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the new owner of York Street Cafe or the proposed new owner, didn't he just go before the BOA?
I don't know.
I think he did. I watched
Also,
that
somebody's
hearing.
buying it.
I watched that hearing.
He
I
found a
wanna say it
buyer.
was- I'm thinking it was the Board of Adjustments. Pardon me. Sorry.
He found a buyer.
There is a buyer.
Oh,
I
that's-
don't know
Oh, that's great.
I don't know if the transaction has actually taken place.
Yeah.
They're
But,
not going to sell it. They're not going to close. Oh, that's my favorite restaurant.
No, no.
Restaurant.
The restaurant is staying there. And if I could go back in my memory well enough, which I'm struggling with that right now, is that they do have plans for the second and third floor
Awesome.
of the York Street Cafe, as well as the, would that be an Italianate building that's attached to it? Because they've got
Next
that walk
door.
through.
Mhm.
And so they had some conditional uses. That's why I think it went before the BOA and everything was approved.
That's awesome. That's great news.
Yeah, that's exciting.
There are things going on York Street, which Larissa and I are not able to share with you right now, but there are some properties, major properties that are going to be transferring soon.
That's
Hopefully.
awesome.
Fingers crossed.
And then is there any, I mean, you don't have to say, but the old Green Derby, is that hopefully in that bucket of stuff?
It's in the bucket, yes,
That's
with
good.
renderings. Yes.
That's great.
And if things would go well, it would be closing by the end of this month.
That's awesome.
So a restaurateur is going to be well received there. So if anybody has any ideas, the new owner's looking for a tenant.
Just real quick too, before we move from this part of the conversation, you know, there are some buildings on Monmouth that they're single-story buildings, and they've got, you know, parking spaces in between them. It's let's see, what block is that? It's, you know, where Huddles and north of all that kind of thing is. So there's a bunch of single-story buildings on that block.
I think it's a 900 block or 10.
No, I think it's
No, it's the 700
600.
block. Is it the
Oh,
former
700.
Aaron's rental building?
between 6th and 7th. Yeah.
The former Aaron's rental?
No.
No?
I'm talking about the old gambling place, the place where Mustang Sally's and stuff is
Oh, okay.
now, or
Mhm.
Mustang Betty's. Sorry.
Larry
And then
Travis's building.
moving south on that block. You know, you've got, and I'm not disparaging any of these businesses by any means, but you've got a really highly trafficked corridor there with single-story buildings that take up a lot of space and a lot of, you know, parking lots and things of that nature. So we've looked, you know, some of the past plans that I've read have had that as sort of an area of focus for some kind of redevelopment or reinvestment over time. So I don't know if that would look like a Central Park area or, you know, something else that's a more intense use. I don't know, but that is an area that it seems to keep popping up in terms of potential.
It's definitely when you're walking down Monmouth, like if I'm walking from our co-working space up to the levee, that is a gap area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sarah, can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Well, I've got my Google pulled up too. If you want to let me share, I can.
Is that the same block as Bass and Brass Pool?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think your comments are right on cue about the permeability of that space. You know, creates a lot of opportunity for connectivity to Monmouth.
Yeah.
Can you let me share my screen real quick, Sarah? Just real quick.
It's not, I don't see an option to,
Is it at the bottom?
At the bottom, it's green.
yeah, it's not, yeah, I know where it normally is, but it's
Okay.
not showing up as an option.
That's okay.
You may have to make her like a co-host for let her share.
Well, there's on the screen share there usually is a little tab that says allow, that'll pop up and it'll say allow others to share, but that's okay. That's all right. I was just going to show the street view.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
know.
That's okay. Don't worry about that. That's right. It just, you can feel what I'm talking about a little bit more on the street, but you've all been there. It's fine.
Do you want to narrate? It's between 6th and 7th.
Yeah.
On
So
Monmouth?
so it starts here at 6:45 in Monmouth, and so you've got Mustang Sally's. You've got that little 2-story, almost looks like a house building. There you go. There you go. Turn around.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that.
Yeah, this block in here. Well, and even the eastern part of the side of the road as well. You've got some single-story buildings, and I'm sure they're historic and have some historic value there too. But it just seems like an area of underutilized space along a main corridor to me.
Mm-hmm.
Larissa, what is the potential to try to get the brass ass out of there? I know that he's kind of stubborn, but is there any? Do you think there's a percentage of opportunity there?
I am not 100%. They tried. The city tried in the past, and Bev might even know. She's been around longer than me, and failed. They tried and failed. So I don't know exactly what tools they used, and I'm not sure exactly why they failed at that juncture. But however they failed, it makes it very. It seems to be making it very difficult for us to try again.
Well, I think
it's a sticky thing.
I mean, to have a group of people talking about my business saying we want you out.
Right, and it's a grandfathered use. It's allowed to be there under the law, and so they're not breaking any laws.
Right.
We keep an eye on those kinds of things. And
I can't imagine them generating any revenue whatsoever. But maybe that's not their objective.
I'm not 100% sure.
Comment on the 600 block, please.
Yeah.
I looked at one of the vacant buildings to use as a pop-up for Halloween that is next to the brass ass. I got a lot of good feedback, but then it never went through because I think he just likes to have people look at that building and then never follows through on renting it. The one nice thing about the 600 block from the brass ass and Huddles south is we have lots of nice little niche businesses with Peluso's Market and the comic book and French Gate and Urban Chick. I think that's one of the blocks that half the block has lots of niche businesses that are retail.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of consulting businesses and offices, but we sometimes lack the niche businesses that also help draw people into that business corridor. So if York Street could develop some of that, that might be advantageous too. And of course, if we could ever get over COVID and we could have our Friday night opens or Saturdays with the businesses, we could draw people then too. But I actually like 600 block. There are issues in the evenings down near Huddles that I wish weren't there, but the people that come to my place aren't there at night at 11 o'clock at night anyway. So
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And once you get to Huddles, yes, the buildings are more significant in size, and you're right, the businesses in there are really cool, and it's like no other place, I think, in the region. It's a really neat space of retail there. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's really the northern part of the block that has the most potential.
Right.
correct, yes.
And this may not be a good idea. I'm just thinking as I'm looking at the map. I really think alleyways, I know that's a street in this case, it's not an alley, but alleys are so fun to program and do things, and and I believe it's a brick street anyway, and I don't know if that's one way to connect York and Monmouth, having these little, I don't know.
Talking about Orchard? You're talking about Orchard? Oh.
Yeah, and I know that's a street, it's not an alley,
love
but
Orchard Alley. I call it the alley because I back right into it. I love the alley.
yep.
We back into it, and I walk over to Wooden Cask. The only issue with Orchard is that people who pull out of Wooden Cask don't realize it is a one-way. So, but so that sometimes becomes a problem. And the people coming out of that, backing out of that red building there, which that is really going to be a cool building. I met the young couple who bought that and are renovating it. They're really cool. I think they're both in the music industry. They would be good ones to eventually tap into for, that green space living room on the opposite side.
And it's they're changing it back to residential if I'm looking at the right.
Yes. Yeah, they're going to live in there.
Yeah. Anyway, I love the alley use.
So Rachel, can I ask you a question about that alley? See that white car and that red car there and that past the garbage cans?
Yeah.
That blacktop is my area, well, with that lovely dumpster, which is gone. But I would love to be able to have some green back there. The big tree is on the other side, is La Mexicana. I don't know if that's something we could talk about, but I'd love, and all that vine on the fence is all gone now. Falcon took that all out, and they're gonna put a brick wall up.
Yeah, you and I can talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to talk to you about that.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Putting my arborist hat on, the other nice thing about having this park idea over towards the west side is that the canopy cover on the west side is so low, and that has such impacts on public health. Kids have less asthma when there's higher tree canopy. People are more out and about when there's higher tree canopy because of the shade. And in the east row, canopies, 25% of the land is covered by tree canopy, and over in the west side, I think it's around 10. So this would be a big aid in that. I mean, that's not the reason to do it, but it's like, oh, hey, if we did it there, that'd be great.
No, it's a great reason. That site is about 4 acres, approximately. So pretty significant scale. So talk more about connectivity to and from the west side to a space like that.
To a space like the park?
Yes. So there's Columbia Street on the west side of that property.
Well, one thing along 6th Street goes all the way across, all the way to the school, which is, when we were doing the Connect NKY bike project, and it's a pretty wide street, so at least until it gets further along, was a good connector.
Yep.
School, library, to park, to other areas in the west side kind of thing. It gets narrow right where you are right now, but.
Yeah, that's a great street. And then what about further west on the other side, the west side neighborhoods connecting to that?
I don't.
Does Columbia become the focus for that, or?
No, because Columbia dead ends
Right.
the school, so it's not a through thoroughfare kind of thing. I think Central is pretty central. That's the name probably. I don't know, someone like Josh would be a better person to ask. I mean, when we did rides, we went through and we went all along the new AA piece, and which was somewhat scary on a bike because it's basically more of a highway than, and we had some kids ride with us, and we did ask, hey, where do you ride? And they were all over the road. They didn't care. They just were like, we'll go anywhere.
Yeah, but the idea that there's a school in close proximity, that's another destination that you want to be bikeable too.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of nice that it's that close.
Yeah, let's see, Columbia Dead Ends. What is that, 8th Street? Yeah, so I think more people go into the school from 9th Street from what I've seen as far as biking and walking.
They go in from 9th because of 8th Street being one way.
Yeah.
Can't get into that parking lot off of 8th.
Right, that's right, okay. I do think though, looking at this, if we're, talking that one way, two way, I mean, if York Street is all of a sudden two way also, that opens up all sorts of places that you could go.
Yes, it does.
In your car or wherever,
I know we have our transportation engineer, Sean, on the line. Sean, do you have any questions or comments about two-way traffic, some of these connectivity questions that are being discussed?
No, everybody's on the right, path with some of the issues surrounding about the two-way conversion and how it could impact parking. Looking at some of the traffic and being part of a two-way conversion project in Louisville, I know they're really a sensitive topic, and that one of the challenges with Newport in particular is that York and Monmouth are both U.S. routes. So
I was going to say that, yeah.
The transportation cabinet, because of that, is going to be very cautious about doing too many things different with it. So it's something that we'll have to work with them, and there'll need to be further study. But from what I've experienced in Louisville, that it's night and day difference. I know the business owners in Louisville really appreciate it, and they all voice the same concerns, that it wasn't that you just tend to, with a one-way street, you just tend to drive through the city. You don't really get to explore it too much. So there's not an opportunity for other folks that, say going to Newport on a levee, stop and visit a restaurant along the way, especially if it's not on the one-way street that they pass through to get there.
Yeah.
So there, it's one of those things, even with the parking study, that will have to be evaluated. And the challenges with Newport is you got it's a U.S. route. You got to look at it with the parking. There's been some concerns expressed that there's not enough parking downtown, which, it sounds like today, from everyone's perspective, that doesn't seem to be the case, at least on Monmouth and York. And the other challenges too with the bike lanes. I know Saratoga is a great candidate for it. Looking to put that other folks on Monmouth or York, utilizing them as, with putting them with bike lanes too, that will also affect, for one, parking, but it could affect, how the opportunity to do a two-way conversion. If you left it at one way, then you can maybe even get by with one lane instead of two lanes in each direction. So you could have bike lane on it. Yeah. So just really trying to balance the needs of all different, the bike, ped, connectivity, one way to two way, parking. So it's one of those things where I think you have to have a pretty good handle on and understanding of, what the community's needs are, and do an in-depth study of all of them concurrently, just to see how one affects the other.
Along with what Sean said about the state routes, that is a big barrier we ran into with Connect NKY, is the state wasn't has very set rules about what you can do and can't do. And we were kind of wanting to do some fun, what we would call some fun changes and colors and all, this stuff that we could do on city streets, but we just could not do it on a state route. So as far as bike stuff goes, at least what we were looking at was just like, oh, that's a bigger thing that could take years. We just avoided it.
Right. So like in Cincinnati, you'll see it in Lexington, you'll see it in Louisville. They have what they call interim approval to do so. So the Federal Highway Administration, they approve all the pavement markings through the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The green bike paint and some of the bike boxes that you see in other larger communities and even right across the river, they've requested interim approval to use those markings. Well, in Ohio, they approved it statewide for statewide use. Anybody can use it, city, state, township, whatever. In Kentucky, the only two municipalities that have approval to do so is Louisville and Lexington. The request to do it is really a one-page letter. Not saying that it will be approved, but it's an easy process. But you have to agree to maintain those pavement markings as well as sort of monitoring the effects of them, since it is an interim approval.
It's good that precedent has been set.
Yes.
It has, and you mentioned maintaining. Let's be clear. Even though it's a KYTC roadway, any of these changes that we're going to make, the city's going to have to pay for. They will not pay for those kind of additional signals or stop signs or paint or whatever. So that'll be on the city's shoulders as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's really helpful from a biker's perspective to especially some of the users that are not as comfortable riding in the streets, but they may want to. It really helps delineate where they're supposed to be especially at intersections. So it's I think they're great pavement markings. I think they're really helpful. The downside is that they do cost relatively a lot for paint. It's a special type of paint. It's either thermoplastic, which is basically a melted plastic colored that you place on it, or it's a really thick, durable paint that you spread. It's almost like instead of paint, you put it on with a squeegee. So it's a little bit more expensive, and they do wear out. So that's just something that from whoever's perspective it is.
Do Good, I don't know if you were part of that discussion, Larissa. That's who funded Connect NKY, that grant we got. They did say that they're open to paying for materials if we wanted to put the lanes in. So not the labor, but the materials. So I don't, that was a while ago. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but yeah. But
the idea of pursuing some grant support is not off the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I appreciate your input.
No, and you can use them on city streets. It's just any state route you have to get interim approval to do it.
Can I just add too? And when we talk about parking studies and do we need more parking in the city or not, and I use I guess that's why I'm probably not the target audience. We're talking about people coming in from out of the area to park and go out to eat. Is that because I wonder how many people are doing rideshare, Uber, Lyft? I mean, I just assume I'm going to do that. Like, I'm not going to drive downtown. I'm not even going to drive to Clifton. I'm just going to Uber there. It's just easier. And I wonder, are we factoring that in? And I don't even know how you'd factor that in, but I hope
one of the ways that business districts are factoring it in is they're creating places for Uber and Lyft to have pickup and drop off points that are designated.
Yeah.
We're working on several of those across the river because you're right. I mean, that's, pre-COVID, that was the growing method of choice. And I'm sure we'll get back to more of that, soon. So it's definitely something that should be factored in.
Yeah,
Right, and even the most recent, ULI parking studies and those kinds of manuals that come out, they've got some really good ratios and studies or best practices related to how to factor in how many people are gonna make use of those kinds of options into your zoning code. We started to look at that as well.
yeah. And something else to consider that is that deliveries, if they're delivered off the storefronts, and generally I've seen trucks, stop in the middle of the road. And if it's a 2-lane, one-way road, it's generally not a big issue. But when you convert it to 2-way, or if you reduce it to 1, then you just stop traffic. And especially in locations where there's no rear access, no alley access, when we make these conversions, make sure the adjoining business still has somewhere to receive deliveries.
That's a great point. I know we're getting close to the time when we had on our agenda for open discussion. I just want to make sure that we end this open space living room discussion with feedback from everybody that there's this one major opportunity that we really need to focus in on, and there's not any others that we should be investigating. Is that
One more thing I thought of, I was just zooming in on my Google Maps. On 6th Street, in between Monmouth and York, there's that American Legion Hall. I don't know what happens there, but it sure does look like a big building with not much happening.
Right, that's that pink dot there.
That building is quite active. We probably don't want to know what's going on inside, but I didn't say that. That's your Legion people, you're probably an older generation, and it does stay active. And there's a lot of, I think Joy can help me on this one. There's usually a lot of vehicular traffic.
Really?
That building in that lot. Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is. Pre-COVID, they had a really high attendance bingo. That was the busy nights of the week. It was one of my favorite places for my dad to go to commiserate with his contemporaries. But there is a fairly younger crowd of, veterans I see in and out of there. Again, it's on my walking path.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
What about this property here? Is this very active? Is it, are they doing well? Are they?
Equipment rental.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our rental.
And it's very active. I mean, I don't know that it's the best use, but it's been there a long time, and there's people using it all the time.
Yeah, I've used it a lot myself, and
Me too.
I've often wondered, do they have a desire to grow? Do they ever have a problem with access, with trailers coming in and out of there and big equipment, or are they happy there and have everything they need?
They're
definitely thriving.
Across the street.
Yeah, that building catty corner, that square, they use that also.
Yep. I just wondered if they need more room to grow.
Somewhere else, you mean?
Well, in the city of Newport for sure, but I mean, would they like to have more room to grow? I don't know.
Yeah, it's buildings like that. I think, gosh, it would be so much more really appropriate for something like that to be down like where the shopping center area is, easier access, more parking, more space. But yeah, that's some prime real estate that they have. That's for sure.
What would we think about it being closer to the East End neighborhood as an alternative to the one that we were just talking about?
I feel like Builder Surplus is probably the prime location. I think it's a good location between East and West and North and South, and I think it's a really good location.
Chris, were you suggesting potentially moving that over to the Building Surplus?
I'm just, asking for everyone's input to see if there are other locations that we should consider as we study the central space living room idea.
I would hate to see I think the way that would come across if we did do something, suggested something like that is oh, you're giving the west side this utility stuff, and that arts rental is sort of the east side, and I wouldn't even want to go there. I like creating amenities on the west side because I feel like it's been a neglected area, and I would hate to look at something like that.
I appreciate that.
I think at some point arts is going to sell out to some developer. That's probably happen.
When we
Yeah.
did our bike lane project, we went right by there and we got cones from them, and they drove the cones out with their equipment, and they were really, they were like, you could take our parking for the week. Like, we don't care. And so we did use it, and they were really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're so friendly, and everybody in the region uses them. I mean,
Yeah.
they're liked by everybody.
Yeah.
So I know Kristen popped up there. We want to open back up to broader discussion to close the session out.
Well, yeah, so as Chris mentioned, we're in the last 10 minutes or so of the discussion. Was there anything anyone wanted to bring up that we haven't already discussed?
I did bring up the safety and drug issues that I deal with on my street. I think that is something, I don't know if I know how to address that. I have solved like a national problem. It's everywhere, but that is a barrier.
Mhm.
And I deal with it, and I know it's even more prevalent on the west side.
Have there been efforts to create neighborhood watch programs and sort of collaborative?
I think it happens organically. We certainly all watch on my street, and the police are on it anytime you call. I mean, it's really, I think things are being done. My struggle is with landlords. That's my struggle.
What do you mean by that? That they're not being...
Yeah, I've contacted them saying, hey, we're constantly calling the police on this,
on their tenants.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I don't want to get someone kicked out. It's not the low income issue, it's the drug and crime issue. So I don't mind my neighbors. I think they're great people. So I also don't want to turn this into a gentrification thing either.
Yeah. Hey, Larissa, is there an opportunity to associate landlord accountability with rental licenses?
Yes, and we do that, and occupational licenses as well.
Yeah, so I would think, I mean, I have to renew my rental property licenses every year, and I would expect that that's associated with accountability for running a legit operation. And if there's multiple calls on my tenants, I would have to either take action to change my tenant or lose my license.
Yep, we have.
I would expect that.
We have gone down that path with many landlords in the past.
So Rachel, maybe there's opportunity there for.
Well, I've gone that route too, and they have changed tenants, and it's not
Got the same thing. Yeah.
There's been some good ones, but it's, I don't know. Just bringing it up that's a factor.
It's a tough challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Any other topic that, or suggestion on what else to address?
Well, I just do want to say, follow up on Rachel's comment about the safety issues being important. It is something that we are including in this comprehensive plan. We've reached out to the chief and asked him specifically what kinds of actions that they're taking now that should be considered as part of the comp plan. So like their quality of life coordinator, and they don't call them neighborhood watch programs, I don't think anymore. I think it's something a bit more informal, but those kinds of community outreach and trying to make sure that the neighbors in the neighborhoods are comfortable reaching out to police. They know when to do it and how to do it, and making sure that communication is open. So, we're constantly having those conversations, and it'll be part of this as well.
One thing, there's a park across the street from my house, and it's really just a landscape walkway along a parking lot. Phelan Park. I actually take care of the plants over there just because it's right there and I'm a plant person. But when I was talking to the police about it, one of them said, hey, well, we could take the benches out, you know, and kind of stop the loitering. And to me, that's just not a solution. I want more parks. I want places where people to gather. So I just sort of registering that, like, that's not, there's places to play chess there, and there should be.
That's addressing the symptom and not the root cause.
So, but the police are great. I mean, they're on it, and I feel like, hey, it's Rachel.
I have one thing that maybe for us to keep in mind, and I don't know if it's for this group or for another group or just another conversation, but I have noticed with some of the bars down towards my direction in between the levee that there has been this influx in traffic on 4th Street near me, and it's cars that are flying through and so I just have some concerns about like pedestrian traffic, and it just seems to be that kind of from Saratoga to 4th, and just kind of making that since it's not a two-way street, but making that U-turn around that block. And so something to just keep in mind as we talk about like bikers and I don't mean motorcycles, but bike traffic or pedestrian traffic, that this area down here is getting a little congested. And as we develop more, we may have to look more at the transportation flow in this area.
Do you feel safe, Amanda, in your where you live?
I do feel safe, but I don't feel as comfortable driving on this little block of 4th Street anymore. It's when you come out of my parking lot, sometimes there's side street, there's the street parking that's right there. And sometimes cars park so close to the exit of my apartment complex that you can't see around them to see if cars are coming down 4th Street. And so if it's late at night, especially on the weekends when the bars have a lot of the traffic, cars are flying through there, and the road is no longer it's not clearly marked that actually is a 2-lane street. So you may have someone who's taking up the whole entire street and just driving really fast through there. So I kind of tried to avoid that little block of 4th Street. And it's changed also with I think if you guys are pulling it up on the map now, but the Academy apartments that are right across the street, it's just become really congested. So then you add to that the flow from the bars and the levee, and I think there's like a liquor store that's on the corner at Saratoga, and it can be interesting on the weekends. I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for pointing that out.
I'm not opposed to bars. I know where I moved. So it's not that, it's just, I would probably like us to keep that in mind and consider how the traffic has been impacted here with the development.
That little liquor store you mentioned, that probably has some opportunity for improvement there as well.
Yeah.
Talk about busy. That place is packed all the time.
Yeah.
It is.
I wonder too, just bringing up another, I know it's almost time, but I don't know if it's just changed recently, but I can hear kind of techno music in the evenings, and I don't know if that's Jersey's, maybe?
Yep, it is.
Yeah. And I went there once they opened, and they're like, yeah, it's like a dance club back here at night, and I was like, oh, that's probably what I'm hearing then. But also bringing up the new venue that's going in, and Larissa, I asked you about this once before, but I like Amanda said, I know where I moved, and I'm not expecting it to be the country and quiet, but I'm hope that we're planning for noise abatement stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And trees would be helpful for that, right, Rachel?
Yes. But absolutely. But it needs to be a significant amount of trees. 1 or 2 doesn't really do it, but a mass of them can reduce highway traffic by 40–50%. But it's like 50 feet of woods, basically. It's not 1 or 2 trees. And then it also takes 20 years for it to get big, and so it doesn't help right away. So, but yes, it all helps.
Well, we're right about at the end. Does anyone have any final thoughts or thinking about all the items, all the topics we have discussed and comments that have been made?
My head's going to explode with ideas, so I'm probably going to go for a really long walk all the way down Monmouth and all the way up York today, just to kind of just refresh my.
Well, on to that fact then, if you do that and you think of additional things, Larissa is always interested in getting additional comments, so I'll put that plug in for her. But absolutely, that this is a discussion area that we're focusing on, this whole area. So definitely any additional comments that come to mind in the next few weeks, feel free to share them.
And Larissa's really great about sharing them directly with the project team too. So she forwards them straight on to us, and we integrate those into our notes.
Well, thanks for involving us. It's nice.
Yeah, thanks for your input. It was really great discussion.
That's good.
All right. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See ya.
Bye-bye.